The following review contains significant plot spoilers. Please watch at your own risk. Hello everyone, another week, another Bond film. This time we will be examining 1967's You Only Live Twice, starring Sean Connery as James Bond 007. This film is the 5th official Bond film. I won't be wasting any time, so let's get right into the plot and synopsis. After the traditional gun barrel, which has a sort of oriental sound to it this time to match the tone of the film, we get into the pre-title sequence. An American spacecraft is hijacked in outer space by an unidentified object. The U.S. blame the Soviets, but the British suspect Japanese involvement in this whole ordeal. We then see Bond in bed with a woman, which is nothing new. What is new, however, is Bond getting shot through a bed and being shown presumably dead. After that image of Bond laying in bed dead, we get the title song sung by Nancy Sinatra. It's an okay song, I guess. After that, we learn that Bond had actually faked his death to get rid of Spectre, who he's foiled the plans of many times before. Bond travels to Tokyo, Japan, where he meets Aki, played by Akiko Wakabayashi, an assistant to the Japanese Secret Service leader Tiger Tanaka, played by Tetsuro Tamba. She takes him to see a local MI6 operative named Deco Henderson, played by Charles Gray. This isn't the last time we will see this actor. Anyways, Henderson is killed and Bond sneaks into Asato Chemicals where he steals some documents. Afterwards, Aki rescues him and takes him to Tiger Tanaka where they examine the documents. The next day, Bond goes back to Asato Chemicals under the alias of Mr. Fisher. He meets Mr. Asato, played by Teru Shimada, and his secretary, Helga Brandt, played by Karen Dorr. After the meeting, Osato orders Helga to kill Bond. When Bond is leaving the building, he is shot upon, but Aki comes and saves him again. Afterwards, Bond drives to Kobe Docks to investigate a ship called the Ningpo. Bond, however, gets captured and wakes up in front of Helga. Bond bribes and seduces her, and the two fly to Tokyo afterwards. Helga has a change of heart, however, and sets off a flare in the plane, jumping out with a parachute. Bond, of course, lands the plane safely. After meeting with Tiger and Aki, they come to the conclusion that Spectre is indeed behind this scheme of trying to create World War III. Osato and Helga report to Number 1 and tell him that they have failed in killing Bond. Number 1 activates a collapsing section of a walkway just as Helga walks over it, dropping her into a pool of piranhas and killing her. He then demands to Osato to kill Bond. After an exciting helicopter sequence featuring a gadget-laden gyrocopter piloted by Bond, a Soviet spacecraft is hijacked by Spectre, heightening tensions between the U.S. and Russia. Later on, Aki is killed via poisoning by a Spectre thug. Bond then becomes disguised by turning Japanese and staging a marriage between him and one of Tiger Tanaka's students, Kissy Suzuki, played by Mie Hama. I wish I was joking, but I'm not. The next day, Bond and Kissy investigate a volcano and notice that the mouth of the volcano is actually a disguised hatch to the secret rocket base. Bond slips inside while Kissy goes and alerts Tanaka. Bond rescues the captured astronauts and with their help disguises as a Spectre astronaut. Bond is, however, caught by Number 1. This is where Number 1 reveals his disfigured face and name for the first time. His name is Ernst Stavro Blofeld, or just simply Blofeld from now on. Also in this film only, he is played by the late, great Donald Pleasence. At this point, the Spectre spacecraft is on its way to hijack another U.S. spacecraft, and the U.S. is about to launch a nuclear attack on Russia. Luckily for Bond, Tiger returns with his huge army of professionally trained ninjas, and they breach the volcano's hatch. The control room is evacuated, and Blofeld kills Osato for his failure. Bond, however, escapes and makes his way to the control room, killing Blofeld's personal bodyguard, Hans, played by Ronald Rich, and taking the keys from him. Bond activates the Spectre spacecraft self-destruct right on time, and the U.S. stands down in relief. Meanwhile, however, Blofeld activates the base's self-destruct and escapes. The film ends with Bond, Kissy, Tiger, and the surviving ninjas escaping and being rescued by a submarine. Sean Connery's performance in this film is okay, but not up to the standards of the previous films. He definitely looks a little older now. What particularly surprised me was how bored he looked in some scenes. After doing some research, I found out that Connery was getting bored with the role at this point, and didn't enjoy being James Bond anymore. Well, that explains it. This was also Connery's last film as Bond, at least for a little while. You'll see what I mean later. Donald Pleasence as Blofeld makes a pretty scary-looking villain. The problem is that's the only thing. He just looks scary. Pleasence is a pretty short man, and there isn't any physical threat at all. They would fix this in the next Bond film, thankfully. Overall, Pleasence gives a great performance and is definitely memorable. After you see Blofeld in this film, you can see where the character of Dr. Evil came from in the Austin Powers trilogy. M and Moneypenny have short scenes that aren't too amazing, but at this point it's a fun little idea to include these characters for a few minutes in each Bond adventure. Q doesn't give Bond any gadgets except for the gyrocopter known as Little Nelly. Tiger Tanaka gives Bond a few gadgets, including a cigarette that shoots explosives, which is pretty cool. Felix Leiter was excluded in this film, and rightfully so. Instead, we get Tiger Tanaka. Tiger is a pretty decent ally, I have to say. There are 3 Bond girls, one being a henchwoman. Aki and Kissy are beautiful, of course, and so is the evil Helga. I find that Helga is pretty much the same as Fiona Volpe from Thunderball, though, both being redheads and working for Spectre. Overall, all 3 actresses are great. The other bad guys worth mentioning are Mr. Osato and Hans. Mr. Osato is just an okay bad guy, while Hans is like a Red Grant prototype. I really wish the fight scene between Bond and Hans went on a little longer. The director this time is a newcomer by the name of Louis Gilbert. He did a pretty good job, but not nearly as good as Terrence Young. Louis Gilbert would direct 2 more Bond films in the future. The score, for the most part, is incredible. There are 2 tracks that really stand out. Here's the first one that plays in the outer space scenes. And here's the second one that plays during Bond's fight with Hans. There's also this Oriental piece that plays way too many times and ends up getting on my nerves. Those 2 epic tracks make up for it, however. There isn't really a whole lot of great action scenes in this film, excluding the finale, of course. There is a great fight between Bond and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's grandfather, though. I thought that was pretty cool. There's a short rooftop chase, but it only lasts about 1 minute and isn't exciting. The Little Nelly sequence was cool. Other than that, there is either unmemorable action scenes or no action at all. The finale with the volcano and the ninjas, on the other hand, is absolutely incredible, and I would actually watch this film just for that ending. Also, in case you haven't seen the film or noticed yet, the entire film is set in Japan. Despite having only one location, I actually like the look of the film. Fans of Goldfinger who didn't like Thunderball will most likely love this one. Unfortunately, I absolutely loved Thunderball and the more straightforward, realistic approach they took with it, unlike this movie. You Only Live Twice is still lots of fun and is possibly on the same level as Dr. No, enjoyment-wise. There are a few questionable scenes like where Bond gets his hair dyed black and other stuff to make him look more Asian, but overall it's a good film and is recommended. I give You Only Live Twice a solid 7 out of 10. Now, of course, for my 5 likes and 5 dislikes. Starting with my likes. I liked the idea of Bond faking his death. It was quite unexpected. I liked Blofeld finally revealing himself. I liked the look of the film. Japan is a very nice looking place. Overall, I loved the score. John Barry is truly a genius. Lastly, I liked the finale with the epic ninja assault on Blofeld's volcano lair. Definitely one of the best action scenes in the entire series. Now for my 5 dislikes. I didn't really like Sean Connery's performance in this film. He looks really bored in some parts. Most of the action scenes are short and don't last long. The ones that do last are some of the better ones in the whole series. The whole Bond getting married and made to look Japanese thing just to be disguised was really dumb. After the more down-to-earth Thunderball, this film ends up as a minor disappointment. Lastly, the casting of Blofeld could have been much better. I like Donald Pleasence, but Blofeld is supposed to be Bond's evil equal, as laid out by the novels. Well, that's all for this week. Next week we will be looking at a very special James Bond film starring a new actor as Bond, and boy am I excited to review it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.